Hello guys, it's John here to another Beyblade ranking video, this time on Dragon. So yeah, one of the last few ranking videos for this whole long series, but yeah. I'll talk about every single dragon. There's only 4, but still, I have some opinions here. So first up, number 4, the worst dragon in my opinion. Gatling Dragon. This thing, listen, it's not awful, but it's also not good. So the dragon core is bound, of course. I mean, like, sure. The Gatling blade has the whole thing where if you pop these parts back and then these parts can, like, slide around. I guess it makes, like, more oval. But, like, again, it works, but it's just kind of like, why? The 10 armor, sure. Not high charge. Charge metal dash, I get it. It's fine, but yeah, it's just underwhelming to get charged technically for a third time on this thing, I feel like. Especially the second time for charge metal. Like, that's just bad. Like, we could have... I wish we got, like, maybe high charge dash or something instead, but, this is unfortunate right here. So overall, this thing just feels very kind of bland and a little bit underwhelming, but not terrible. But my main issue here is the Karma Disc. Who looks at Dragon and says, yep, the Karma Disc, that's exactly what we needed? I feel like Dragon could get away with, like, any other disc, honestly, like, any other disc at all. Especially if it's not an attack disc, because I feel like Dragon's always just known as, like, this bulky bay. I feel like if you put a disc on this thing that's not technically an attack disc, I think it kind of works, but, as far as attack discs go, I mean, Nexus, while not really made for it, it does kind of have that same shape as something like Sting to some extent, so it kind of works, but again, I get why they wouldn't do that one. I'd also say something like Legacy, while awkward, it's a little bit, like, wider at least, it looks a little better, and, I mean, things like Xanthus and Wing Dash weren't out yet, but I'd still say those work better anyway, even though, yeah, they weren't out, but still, Karma, genuinely the worst possible disc they could have chosen. I'm not going to go through every other disc, but yeah, everything else, I think, from a DB disc selection, not kind of the older discs, but any other DB disc, I think, was better. I feel like that, like, just holds it back a little bit. Everything else about this thing just ranges from, like, being okay to just underwhelming, and then that's just stupid. Moving on to number 3, kind of similar in my opinion, and that is Tempest Dragon. Tempest Dragon, listen, following up Imperial Dragon was not gonna happen. So I get why they did Tempest the way they did. Now the chip, nothing really interesting about the chip, that's just kind of how sparking chips were. The Tempest ring did have a whole bound thing. I do like this a little bit more than the Gatling gimmick, in my opinion. Just, push these back, and then if you push this back as well, yeah, they stay out. And, cool. Why not? Not the worst thing you could have for a bay. One attack, it's not interesting, but it works for Dragon, so I'm not going to complain about it. And then Charge Metal. I mean, this is technically the second time we saw something like Charge, and the first time we're getting Charge Metal. Of course, the first variant of Charge. Well, I guess Charge Dash released like a month before this, but still. First variant to release on Dragon, I guess, and yeah, Charge Metal, sure. Again, this thing isn't great, but I'm not gonna complain about it. Again, it's just kind of ranging from, like, underwhelming to decent. But there's nothing here that really upsets me, like with Gatling, so it just kind of gets third by default in that case. Now we get to things that I actually start to like. Number 2, Ace Dragon. Ace Dragon, in some ways, you could argue is just, like, a less important or less interesting version of Gatling or Tempest. But it was the first one, so I'm giving it a little bit more leeway. The Dragon Ship doesn't do anything. The Zanwade's also not really doing anything. The Ace Base doesn't do anything. No gimmicks on the layer, but you know what? It looks cool. And also, you do get the 2 extra bases with it. You do get Rock and Gran, in case if you want to swap out to, like, Stamina or Defense. So, yeah. I mean, it's cool. So you get extra parts with it. That's nice. As far as parts go, Sting. Do you have the bound aspect of the disc? That's kind of cool. And then Charge, kind of a little bit reminiscent of Excel for the very bottom, but this giant extra piece with a bunch of metal in it to weight it down and just be large in general. While yes, you could definitely make the argument that Tempest or Gatling is better, well, there's two things. First up, I just like the look of this thing a lot. I think it looks better than both of those personally. But also, it was the first one to do this. You know, like, we didn't have anything else. This was the first dragon. I feel like it deserves some leeway in that department. It's also what Tempest and Gatling kind of ended up following anyway, so again, it was the first to do it, so I will give it some extra credit in that regard. Number one, this isn't a surprise to anyone, but Imperial Dragon. This was the only interesting dragon, in my opinion. The Dragon 2 chip doesn't do anything, but that's fine. The Imperial base has, like, everything going on, so you have, like, 3 layers here. The top layer is kind of the main looking layer. You know, it looks like an evolution of Ace, as you'd expect. Plus, these 2 parts are metal. Also, there's some metal underneath, as the weight is fused onto the chip. This, like, middle section is gold plastic, and yes, there is kind of a bound aspect to this thing. You can awaken some of these parts. I'm not going to pull anything out, but yeah, you can have these gold parts push outward permanently as a permanent awakening. Again, not gonna do that on camera, but still, I do want to keep this thing as is, so yeah, but you do have that kind of option there, which is really, really cool. And which is kind of a cool extra addition, I guess. So, yeah. And there's the bottom layer, which has these 4 rubber points on it, which, yeah, sure. And then obviously the disc driver fusion being, of course, an electric driver. Ignition dash. Ignition dash, well, first up it's a dash driver, which is kind of cool, but also it's an electric driver. It has, like, its own patterns. It has the whole thing where it kind of spins in the opposite direction from what you'd expect from the, you know, the spin direction that it's in, and yeah, I mean, that's just really cool. Really, really cool idea with that pattern there, and yeah, the overall bay just ends up being very interesting. Also, the design of this thing I always just really liked, and it's very unique as well, so yeah. Number one, it's like really far, like, okay, Gatling and Tempest, I think Tempest is like a decent bit better than Gatling, and then, like, Ace is like slightly better than Tempest, and this thing is just, it's better than all of those by so much. It's better than all of them combined by far. Imperial, yeah, it's by far the best dragon. I feel like this is one of the ones where I don't think this is a very hot take. I think that this might be my most normal take so far. I think that saying Imperial is the best dragon is, yeah, it's about as average of a take you can get. I don't think that's much of an argument there. Maybe some people like one of the other ones better, but it's probably very few, so yeah. Imperial's the best dragon. So anyway, that's all for this one. The next ranking video for December, which will be probably a bit earlier in the month, is going to be the Diablos ranking video, and that's going to be the final normal ranking video. There will be a final video in January, which we'll talk about next time. But yeah, for now, that's it for this ranking video. It was honestly a very easy one to decide. This was not a challenge. So anyways, yeah, that's it. So thanks for watching, and bye-bye.